I followed Cade Lu my whole life, bore him children, and even until his death, he never promised me a wedding. Among his belongings, I found a photo he had always kept in his wallet, and only then did I realize there had always been someone else in his heart. At the age of 70, I took poison and ended my life. My 2 sons watched me struggle to die in the sun shower, unmoved. After I took my last breath, they had me cremated immediately and, thinking it was bad luck, didn't even keep an urn. They flushed my ashes down the funeral home's drain, and my belongings were tossed outside like trash. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the moment his white moonlight showed up at our door with a child, as the father and his 2 sons repeatedly accused me of being cold-hearted and unwilling to take them in. I took out the divorce agreement and left that home directly, but unexpectedly, after I left, they completely broke down. 1. Because of you. My godmother is still lying in the hospital. I don't want someone as cold-hearted and ruthless as you to be my mother. Brother, why are you still talking to that vicious woman? Dad is here, hang up the phone and come eat. The malice in the childish voice was unmistakable. I listened to the dial tone for a long time, staring at my reflection in the mirror, before I realized that I had been reborn, returned to the age of 27. And to the 3rd day after Vera Gu had shown up at our door with her daughter. Vera Gu was Cade Lu's first love. She had left the capital city 7 years ago without a trace, but 2 days ago, she appeared before Cade Lu covered in scars and with her daughter. Cade Lu wanted to take her to the hospital, but she refused no matter what. Cade Lu had no choice and, without my consent, let her stay at our house. I was afraid of Cade Lu and also felt sorry for the injured Vera Gu. So I didn't say anything, but when I came back from hand-washing Cade Lu's and our 2 sons' intimate clothing, I found Vera Gu actually sleeping on my and Cade Lu's wedding bed, and her daughter even called me a fool. I am the daughter of the Jiang family conglomerate, and Cade Lu is my child groom. When my mother was pregnant with me, she suffered a serious illness. I was born prematurely and have had lower intelligence than normal people since birth. When my mother was alive, she would patiently teach me how to express myself, but Cade Lu never liked listening to me speak. Whenever I talked, impatience would appear in his eyes. After that, I tried my best not to speak in front of him. After my mother passed away, he became even more unwilling to listen to me. Over time, I didn't know how to express myself in front of him. When my emotions erupted, I would only make a scene and cause a disturbance. That day, I became furious and frantically drove them out. Cade Lu called me unreasonable and left with them, and they still haven't returned, along with my 2 children, Ethan Lu and Adrian Lu. Today is the 7th wedding anniversary of Cade Lu and me. In my previous life, I cooked a big table of dishes that the father and his 2 sons loved. I originally planned to call them back as a way to make peace, but I was hurt by my son's words, stumbled in a daze, and hit my head. In my past life, I couldn't understand why the children I carried for 10 months and raised with such effort were unwilling to call me mom, yet so readily called someone they had only known for 3 days their godmother. Now I understand, the genes of the inferior are also inferior, too. In my previous life, it was only after Cade Lu died that I found out Vera Gu was his first love, and even Vera Gu's daughter was his. Because of my special circumstances, my mother always felt guilty toward me. After my father died in a car accident, she was afraid that if she passed away, I would have no one to protect me and would be taken advantage of, so she adopted Cade Lu from an orphanage. Originally, it was meant to find me an assistant, but after witnessing Cade Lu's talent, she changed her mind and decided to make him my child groom. My mother often told me that Cade Lu would be my husband in the future, my only support, and encouraged me to spend more time with him to build our relationship. After that, I became Cade Lu's shadow. Cade Lu was exceptionally intelligent and followed a special elite education path, entering the Jiang Corporation early to help my mother manage the company. Vera Gu was his good sister from the orphanage. After he joined the Jiang family, he used some means to specially recruit Vera Gu as his secretary. The 2 of them carried on a secret affair right under the noses of my mother and me. Cade Lu hates me for tearing him and Vera Gu apart. I will never forget the look in his eyes before he died. He had always looked at me with indifference and little emotion, but in that final glance, even someone as foolish as I could feel the bone-chilling hatred in his eyes, he said, "Lily Jiang, I originally wanted to treat you like a sister, but you separated me from my beloved for years, leaving me unable to return home. If I die, you should go to hell too." At that time, I didn't understand what he meant. After all, in my understanding, we were husband and wife, so our true love was each other, and our home was each other's home. It wasn't until I saw Vera Gu's photo in his wallet, until I was kicked out of the house by Vera Gu before I could even process the grief of losing him, and until all our assets were left to his illegitimate child with Vera Gu, that I finally understood the truth of everything. It turns out that he loved Vera Gu, and his revenge began after Vera Gu left, before his mother passed away. He followed her wishes and married me, promising to take care of me for the rest of my life. After that, he coaxed me into having one child after another, making me devote all my energy to the children, leaving me no time for anything else, let alone the company's affairs. As a result, I had no idea when he changed the company's legal representative or when he transferred all the assets. After his death, I truly, as he wished, went through hell. However, I have no knowledge whatsoever of his claim that I broke him and Vera Gu apart. Cade Lu is 2 years older than me. While he was helping his mother manage the company, I was still in school. I only met Vera Gu once by chance when I went to see him. At that time, I thought Vera Gu was even more foolish than me. She could burn her hand just making coffee for Cade Lu, and she would stumble right into Cade Lu's arms just walking around. After I learned to walk, I stopped falling. And as for making coffee, my hands were very steady when holding the cup. I just didn't understand back then. Why was it that despite being equally foolish, Cade Lu treated Vera Gu with such doting care and gentleness? While he was full of impatience with me, I shared my confusion with my mother, telling her I thought Cade Lu probably didn't like me, just like everyone else. My mother comforted me, saying it wasn't true and that I shouldn't overthink it, but after that, I never saw Vera Gu again, until she returned 3 days ago. When the man has feelings and the woman is willing, it's inevitable for old flames to rekindle. 3. The leaves on the roadside were swaying violently in the fierce wind, the sky was gloomy, and lightning flashed with thunder. Holding the steering wheel in my hands, I still feel a sense of unreality. I instinctively touched my stomach. If I remember correctly, I should be pregnant with Cece at this moment. In my previous life, my 3 children and I were driven out of our home. Ethan Lu and Adrian Lu stayed with me for 2 years but couldn't endure it any longer, so they went back to find their godmother, Vera Gu. Only my youngest daughter, Cece, remained with me. Although I am a bit slower than others, I don't want the property my mother left me to be taken by someone else. I hired many lawyers. But Cade Lu had previously contacted all those law firms before his death, and no lawyer dared to take on the case. I sought help from lawyers in other provinces, but they said that an illegitimate daughter inherently has the right to inherit property, making this case very difficult to win. By the time more than half of the emergency funds my mother had set aside for me were used up, we still hadn't won the case. Without the house, the education of my 3 children became a problem. In the capital city, where every inch of land is worth its weight in gold, the money I had left was far from enough to buy a house there. On top of that, my children's education would require a significant amount of money. As a result, I had no choice but to take them to a small, remote county town, where I bought a house and settled down. In the small county town, job opportunities were scarce. Being older and a single mother, I faced numerous rejections in my job search. Fortunately, my appearance was still decent, and I eventually found a job as a waitress at a nightclub. Being a waitress is seen as inferior in the eyes of others, and in the eyes of my 2 sons, I am also looked down upon. Ethan Lu and Adrian Lu believed that working at a nightclub meant I was a prostitute, and their disgust for me grew increasingly intense. The contempt in their eyes was exactly the same as Cade Lu's. One day, I came home from the night shift and couldn't find my 3 children, which made me extremely anxious. I went to check the surveillance footage and found that Ethan Lu and Adrian Lu had dragged Cece into a taxi. Just as I was breaking down in tears from desperation, a kind-hearted person brought Cece back. Even though she was crying uncontrollably, she still hugged me with her soft little body and comforted me, saying, "Mommy, if our brothers don't want us, then we don't want them either. Cece will always stay with you. Cece is my pearl, my redemption." Although we didn't win the lawsuit, public opinion was extremely intense regarding Cade Lu distributing all his assets to his illegitimate daughter, which greatly affected the Jiang family's stock market. To please Vera Gu, Ethan Lu and Adrian Lu, after returning, collaborated with Vera Gu to slander me in front of the media. They claimed I was the other woman, that my mother used her power to force Cade Lu to marry me and break them up. Ethan Lu and Adrian Lu also said I earned money with my body at nightclubs, came home drunk and abused them, and even showed their arms and chests covered with scars in front of the camera. No one would suspect that children would lie and falsely accuse their own mother in such a way. After this incident, those who originally stood by my side joined Vera Gu's camp and, together with them, condemned me both online and offline. During that time, I was like a rat in the gutter, despised and attacked by everyone. Those people found my home, sprayed paint on the door, and sent funeral flowers and various terrifying dolls. Even my daughter faced exclusion and bullying at school. During that period, I couldn't sleep night after night. My hands trembled involuntarily. I often had unexplained tinnitus, and tears would flow without me realizing. I couldn't understand the meaning of living. Once, I stood on the balcony, and if Cece hadn't pulled me back, I might have really jumped. Cece was terrified. It was as if she grew up overnight, sticking by my side every moment. She cooked for me, and even after those people came to our house again, she learned to call the police. Like a mother hen protecting her chicks, she shielded me behind her. Cece is my angel. Looking at the 2-week pregnancy test result in my hand, I touched my belly and nearly cried with joy. In my previous life, I didn't discover I was pregnant with Cece until a month later. After being sweet-talked by Cade Lu, I agreed to let Vera Gu and her daughter Chloe Song move into our villa. While I was away from home, Chloe Song broke the photoshopped wedding photo of me and Cade Lu that I had commissioned. I was so enraged that I started bleeding and nearly had a miscarriage. Not only did Cade Lu not blame them, but he also accused me of making a fuss and picking on a child. I will never forget the smug and malicious expressions on Vera Gu and Chloe Song's faces when I was kicked out of the room. In my previous life, under the protection of Cade Lu and the wealth he left behind, they thrived and did everything they could to drive me and Cece to ruin. In this life, it's their turn to go to hell. For, when I returned from the hospital, the lights were on in the villa. I frowned slightly, remembering that I had turned off the lights when I went to the hospital for a checkup. Could it be that Aunt Wu had come back? I parked the car, opened my umbrella, and walked toward the front door in the heavy rain. As soon as I arrived at the door, I saw Cade Lu standing there. The ironed shirt was covered by a black suit vest, accentuating a straight and tall waist, while the 2 legs beneath the black trousers were straight and slender. His facial features were sharp and defined, with a handsome and refined appearance, long brow bones, and dark eyes that held a distant, indifferent, somewhat gloomy and cold expression. He leaned against the door, just looking at me. I hadn't expected him to come back. In my previous life, although he came back today as well, it was only because I begged him to. The night my father had the car accident, it was also stormy with thunder and lightning. Because of that, after my father passed away, I became especially afraid of thunder. The condition Cade Lu set for his return was to let Vera Gu and Chloe Song move in, and I agreed. I just don't know why Cade Lu came back in this life, and I don't want to know. I averted my gaze, closed my umbrella, shook off the water droplets, and hung it up. Just as I was about to pass him and enter the villa, he grabbed my arm. "Where have you been?" His voice was flat, giving no hint of emotion. I didn't feel like talking to him and tried to pull my hand away, but he held on tightly. I looked up and rolled my eyes at him. "If your eyes are useless, just donate them." In my previous life, until the day he died, I never dared to act recklessly in front of him. I was always carefully trying to please him. Cade Lu was clearly taken aback for a moment. Instinctively glancing at the bandaged wound on my forehead, taking advantage of his distraction, I pulled my arm away and went inside. Ethan Liu and Adrian Liu were playing with racing cars in the children's toy area. Hearing the noise, they both turned to look at me, then snorted coldly and turned away in unison. I glanced at the racing car and immediately recognized it as one Vera Gu had bought for them. I had no experience being a parent, so I simply replicated how my own parents had raised me, giving them the best of everything. The one Vera Gu gave them couldn't even compare to the worst one I had bought for them. Yet the two of them cherished this racing car dearly. In my previous life, there was a time when I was tidying up the playroom, and they couldn't find it. They hit and scolded me, asking why I dared to touch the things their godmother had given them. During dinner, they even threw a bowl at me. Even though it was something from a past life, thinking about it now still makes my heart ache uncontrollably. I took a moment to steady myself, crouched down, and changed the shoes on my feet. I just got back and was eager to prove Cease's existence, so I haven't eaten yet, and now I'm a bit hungry. After putting my bag away, I went to the kitchen. While plating the dishes, I heard Cade Liu's voice. Ethan Liu and Adrian Liu, come eat. I just ate a lot at my godmother's place. I don't want to eat. Cade Liu said sternly, come here. When I brought out the food, I saw Ethan Liu and Adrian Liu reluctantly coming to the dining room, still holding their remote controls for the race cars. I didn't say anything. After putting down the dishes, I went to serve myself some rice and started eating. Thunder rumbled outside as the father and his two sons watched Lily Jiang eating alone, their expressions subtle. Even Adrian Liu, who was engrossed in racing, loosened his grip on the remote control. You should know, every time we had a meal before, I would personally serve them their rice and coax them into eating the vegetables they didn't like. After a long silence, Cade Liu got up and went to the kitchen. Returning with a somewhat unpleasant expression, he said to Ethan Liu and Adrian Liu, you two, go back to your rooms. Ethan Liu was somewhat dissatisfied. I still want to play with the race car that godmother bought for us. Go back to your room. Touched by the stern look in Cade Liu's eyes, the two climbed down from their dining chairs and returned to their rooms. After the two children left, Cade Liu sat down opposite me, his dark eyes fixed on me. In the past, whenever Cade Liu stared at me like that, I would feel anxious and uneasy, like a child who had done something wrong, wondering if I had messed up again. But now, under his gaze, my appetite was so good that I ate an extra bowl of rice. In my previous life, after he left all his property to Vera Gu and her daughter, I had been frugal and hadn't enjoyed such a lavish dinner in a long time. Just as I finished wiping my mouth, I heard Cade Liu say, Vera Gu is being discharged from the hospital tomorrow. She doesn't have many friends in the capital, and it's inconvenient for her to stay outside. I've asked Mrs. Wu to clear out a guest room. I threw away the tissue in my hand and interrupted him. The guest room is too cramped. I'll give up the master bedroom. You can arrange the rest yourself. The master bedroom is the marital room for Cade Liu and me. I had just finished speaking, and all of Cade Liu's words came to an abrupt halt. A trace of disbelief flickered in his eyes, and he even doubted whether he had misheard. What did you just say? 5. Perhaps realizing his own impropriety, Cade Liu quickly adjusted his emotions and said impatiently with a frown, Vera Gu was in the wrong last time. But she has always been naive and didn't think that much about it. You don't need to keep holding it against her. She's staying at our house and won't eat much. She's injured and struggling to raise a child alone. Lily Jiang. When did you become so unfeeling? Didn't think that much. Unfeeling. I sneered. You can handle Vera Gu's matter however you see fit. No need to discuss it with me. After saying that, I stood up and left. A loud bang echoed from behind, followed by Cade Liu's voice through gritted teeth, Lily Jiang. You're doing just great. I turned and glanced at him. His expression was extremely unpleasant. The teacup in his hand had been smashed on the table, and there were several cuts on his porcelain white hand. Perhaps noticing that I was looking at his hand, those deep black eyes held a hope I couldn't understand. I was puzzled but couldn't be bothered to guess what he was thinking. I just felt a sense of satisfaction seeing him lose control of his emotions. Suddenly, I seemed to understand why Lu had sent me to hell in my previous life. Watching someone you hate suffer, seeing them in pain, it truly is satisfying. I returned to the master bedroom and moved my belongings one by one to the guest room on the first floor. Lu stood at the top of the stairs, watching me go back and forth as I moved my things, looking at the pair of pillows on the marital bed. For some reason, my nose still stung intensely. Lu actually had his good moments with me too. He knows I'm afraid of thunder, so whenever there's a storm, he holds me and softly comforts me, saying, "I'm here, don't be afraid, go to sleep." Since my parents passed away, I've received so little love that even the smallest kindness from others stays with me forever. I actually know that no one likes a fool, not even my own 2 sons, who share my blood and whom I carried for 10 months. They dislike me, look down on me, and have always refused to call me Mom. I sniffled and took the pillow that belonged to me. Just as I reached the door, Lu blocked my way, stopping me from leaving. His gaze fell on the silk pillow in my hand. His voice as indifferent as ever. "If you move out today, don't ever come back to the master bedroom." I said okay, and his face instantly darkened. He stood at the door, unmoving. I didn't move either. I wasn't trying to compete with him, it was simply because he was blocking my way. After a long silence, he seemed to give in, speaking with a tone that was both helpless and resigned. "Fine, you win, okay, I'll book her a hotel outside, with your temperament. Vera Gu is so innocent and sensitive. Who knows how you might bully her when I'm not around." I stared at him for a long moment, instinctively wanting to say something. But in the end, I said nothing. He didn't move aside, so I hugged my pillow and squeezed past him. Just as I reached the stairwell, I heard Lu's voice, laced with suppressed anger. "Lily Jiang, my patience is limited. You should know when to stop." I didn't answer, nor did I look back. I just hugged my pillow and went downstairs. By the time I finished tidying up the guest room, it was already past 2 a.m. Lying in bed, I thought of something and got up to go to the kitchen. I had guessed that Lu might go into the kitchen to serve the dishes, so I had already put all their favorite foods into one container beforehand, knowing Lu's temperament. He wouldn't touch it again. The food had cooled down a bit, so I heated it up in the microwave before bringing it out. This is a high-end villa area, and the property management is very strict. Not even a mouse can get into the neighborhood. Holding an umbrella, I walked to the garbage station, approached a few wooden planks, and called out for Xiao Bai. After a moment, a white dog came out wagging its tail, its chest hanging low, clearly in the nursing period. The rain outside was too heavy, and its fur was a bit wet. It shook its entire body and looked at me happily with its mouth open. I placed the box on the ground and opened it. Xiao Bai, catching the scent, came over to eat. The heavy rain patters on my umbrella, drip drop, watching Xiao Bai eating happily. I feel a moment of inner peace. I've always liked dogs, but Lu doesn't. Vera Gu likes cats, so he likes cats too. I mentioned wanting to get a dog twice, but he didn't agree either time. Later, I got pregnant, had a child, and never kept a dog again. In my previous life, after Cece graduated, she bought me a little Pomeranian because she was too busy with work to keep me company often. Small dogs don't need to be walked frequently, so it wouldn't tire me out and could still keep me company. It had been with me for nearly 10 years, but Adrian Lu killed it by throwing it to the ground. When Cece was 40 years old, she fell seriously ill. The doctor said she wouldn't last more than 3 years. Fearing that I would have no one to rely on in my old age after her death, she went to Ethan Lu and Adrian Lu and told them that if they didn't support me, she would expose how they had framed me back then, letting everyone see how these entrepreneurs treated their own mother. That day, Ethan Lu and Adrian Lu rushed to our home in a rage. Xiao Ba, sensing their hostility, barked at them a few times. Adrian Lu then picked up Xiao Ba and threw it to the ground, killing it right in front of us. Cece and I were terrified that day. After witnessing their cruelty, Cece no longer dared to bring up the idea of them taking care of me. She just held me and cried, worrying about what would happen to me after she passed away. I had long lost the will to live, but I couldn't bear to leave Cece. The year I turned 70, Cece passed away due to her illness. Ethan Liu and Adrian Liu, afraid of being criticized by others, rushed back on the day of Cece's funeral. After handling Cece's funeral arrangements, I had a full meal. Then, holding Cece's favorite stuffed toy, I sat on the rocking chair in the yard, basking in the sun. Once my body felt warm enough, I picked up the sleeping pills I had saved for a long time and swallowed them all with cold water. My stomach twisted with a sharp, knife-like pain. Just as I closed my eyes, a sudden downpour began from the clear sky. Cece was always afraid I would catch a cold whenever the weather turned chilly. She would bundle me up in thick layers. I was afraid that if I went down there, she would still worry about me. Struggling, I tried to crawl back, but it was just a rocking chair. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get up. When I fell to the ground in a sorry state, Ethan Liu and Adrian Liu walked over through the rain holding black umbrellas. I begged them, pleading for them to help me into the house. They remained unmoved by my pleas, merely watching coldly as I struggled in the sun shower. The sunlight stung my eyes, the cold rain washed away my warmth, and all my thoughts were carried off by the wind. 6. I snapped back to reality, wiped the tears from my face, and watched as Xiaobai ate and drank his fill before finally heading back. The next day, I woke up early, first went to see my parents, then flew to Haisha, and didn't return until evening. As soon as I reached the door, I could hear the laughter and cheerful voices coming from inside the villa. Vera Gu was wearing a white dress with her hair styled in a very ladylike manner, looking gentle and serene. Combined with the bandages of various sizes on her body, she appeared extremely fragile, evoking an involuntary sense of pity in anyone who saw her. She was the first to notice me. Perhaps out of surprise, she choked a little while eating. Seeing this, Caidlu naturally reached out to pat her back. His eyes filled with helpless affection, yet he pretended to scold her. "You're already so grown up, how can you still be so careless while eating?" Meanwhile, Adrian Liu immediately stood up to fetch her some water, saying obediently, "Godmother, have some water." Watching the harmonious scene before me, I felt a bit dazed, as if they were the real family. You should know that Ethan Liu and Adrian Liu have never even said a word of thanks to me, let alone poured me water. As for Caidlu, if I were to choke while eating, he would only look at me with disdain. After drinking the water, Vera Gu timidly looked at me, her eyes filled with caution. Noticing her gaze, everyone in the room turned to look at me. The cheerful laughter and conversation came to an abrupt halt. The warmth and affection on Caidlu's face froze into ice the moment he saw me, and his expression instantly darkened. His extremely dark eyes swept over my face before indifferently shifting away as he continued serving soup for Vera Gu. The two sons snorted coldly before also turning their heads away. When everyone ignored me, it was Vera Gu who stood up. She walked over to me and spoke softly. "Sister, you're back. Caid made some dishes. Let's eat together." What she said was like going to someone's house, just in time to see them having a meal. And then the host says, "Let's eat together." Caidlu grew up in an orphanage, so naturally, he knew how to cook, but since he came to the Jiang family, he hasn't cooked a single meal, let alone one for me. The first meal he made now was for Vera Gu. I glanced at the table. There wasn't a single dish I liked. As if sensing my thoughts, Vera Gu spoke apologetically. "Sorry, sis, we thought you weren't coming back tonight, so..." I only gave them a brief look before heading straight into the guest room. I put down my bag and went to take a bath in the bathroom. After a tiring day, lying in the bathtub felt so comfortable that all my pores seemed to open up. And I started to feel a bit drowsy. When I came out after washing up, I saw Caidlu standing on the balcony smoking. I didn't know how long he had been there, but the whole room was filled with the smell of smoke. I instinctively frowned. Hearing the noise, he turned around to look at me. Without saying a word, he just looked at me with scrutiny. I turned back to the bathroom and put on my underwear before coming out again. He didn't speak, and neither did I. While I was tidying up the clothes I had changed out of, Caidlu's cold voice sounded from behind me. "Lily Jiang, aren't you going to explain?" I stopped what I was doing and looked at him, asking in confusion, "Explain what?" Perhaps my gaze was too indifferent. He looked at me, and his originally gloomy face stiffened for a moment. After a long pause, he finally spoke somewhat awkwardly. Today, the children almost missed school. I sneered and looked at him, saying, "So you're blaming me for not waking them up today, not making them breakfast, and not sending them to school?" Before he could speak again, I continued, "Caidlu, they're not just my children alone, I get tired too." Perhaps my tone was too sharp. Or perhaps it was the first time I had ever expressed feeling tired in front of him. But Caidlu was momentarily stunned. His thin lips parted and then closed, and it took him a while before he finally said, "Then from now on, let the driver take them to and from school." I hummed in agreement, then remembered something and added, "I will be very busy from now on, so please pay more attention to the child's matters." Lily Jiang's words felt like some kind of special instruction, making Caidlu inexplicably uneasy. "Lily Jiang, what's really going on with you?" I didn't say anything more, averted my gaze, picked up the laundry basket, and went to the laundry room. By the time I returned, Caidlu was still in my room. He was leaning against the glass railing of the balcony, a cigarette butt held between his slender fingers. Second-hand smoke isn't good for pregnant women. And thinking of Cece in my belly, I finally spoke up, "I don't like the smell of smoke." He paused for a moment, walked over to the coffee table, and stubbed out the cigarette in his hand. Seeing that he had no intention of leaving, I spoke up, "Do you have something else?" He looked at me for a long moment and said, "The day after tomorrow, I'm going on a business trip to Country J." When I heard Country J, I froze for a moment. In my previous life, he also went on a business trip to Country J, but that was 3 months later. That time, Vera Gu deliberately provoked me, and I lost control and slapped her a few times, which was seen by Caidlu. Caidlu was furious and slapped me hard before taking Vera Gu and Chloe Song to Country J, where they stayed for 2 months. They slept together abroad, and after returning, Caidlu remained chaste for Vera Gu, no longer having any intimate contact with me. Fearing I might bully Vera Gu again, he secretly bought an apartment for her and her mother in the expensive city of Beijing. I only found out about this after he died. When Caidlu said this, there seemed to be a hint of anticipation in his dark eyes. He must have been happy to get rid of a burden like me and live freely with the one he loved. I heard that Country J also has the largest and most beautiful meteor shower. I clenched my palm and let out a faint "oh" after I responded. His reaction was a bit strange, and he added, "It will probably take about a month." In my previous life, his assistant also said he would be gone for a month. But to make Vera Gu happy, he kept delaying it. I hummed in agreement, then remembered something and said, "If you take Vera Gu and Chloe Song with you, you'll have to handle Ethan Liu and Adrian Liu on your own. I might not be able to take care of them." Caidlu looked at me with an expression of disbelief after hearing my words. Why would I bring Vera Gu and Chloe Song along? His question caught me off guard. Could it be that he wasn't planning to bring Vera Gu and Chloe Song along? Before I could react, I heard Caidlu say again, "And what do you mean by handle Ethan Liu and Adrian Liu yourself? I can't take care of them." "Lily Jiang, what exactly are you trying to do? Do you want a divorce?" His dark eyes stared straight into mine, as if searching for something, or perhaps scrutinizing. I pressed my lips together and remained silent. At that moment, Adrian Liu suddenly rushed in, hugging Caidlu's leg and said, "Dad, I want to go to Country J too. Can you take me, my brother, godmother, and sister Yaya along?" Adrian Liu's words were like a knife, stabbing into my heart, leaving it bloody and raw. All these years, I've been a full-time mom, giving them my all, only to be met with disrespect, disregard, and contempt in return. I don't understand where things went wrong. My eyes involuntarily welled up, and the last shred of familial affection in my heart completely severed at that moment. I clenched my fists, trying my best to keep my voice steady and even. Ziyu and Qian are doing well in their studies. Going to J Country won't delay anything. If they want to go, take them too. Caidlu stared for a long moment, looking at me and said, "Lily Jiang, are you serious?" I nodded. He sneered and said, "Lily Jiang, don't you regret this?" After saying that, he grabbed Adrian Liu and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. 7. On the day they left for Country J, I personally saw them off at the airport, just before boarding. Vera Gu looked at me with a mix of pride and pity in her eyes, and she said, "Sis, I heard that the meteor shower in Country J is especially beautiful. I remember you mentioned wanting to see it before. It's a shame you can't go this time. But don't worry, I'll take lots of photos for you." Telling Vera Gu that I wanted to watch a meteor shower was already 7 years ago. It was the first time Vera Gu and I met. She went to pour coffee for Cade Lu and me, wearing high heels, and accidentally twisted her ankle and fell into Cade Lu's arms. I thought she was a bit clumsy in everything she did, so I considered her my kind of person and ended up sharing everything with her. At that time, Cade Lu was also there. I never expected that after all these years. Vera Gu still remembered me saying I liked watching meteor showers. "Oh, and don't worry, sis, I'll take good care of Cade." When she said that, she deliberately emphasized the words "take care." I pretended not to notice her provocation and let out a somewhat dejected which clearly made her even more excited. Vera Gu didn't know that while she was excited, I was equally thrilled. I originally thought the divorce would take at least another 6 months. But since Cade Lu went on a business trip to Country J ahead of schedule, it means the divorce can also be moved up on the agenda. Moreover, hearing Vera Gu personally say "take care" just now has put me even more at ease. After they boarded the plane, I quickly gave Attorney Zhong a call. Perhaps the excitement in my voice was too obvious, as I heard a light chuckle from the other end, followed by a female voice, slightly lower than normal. "All right, I'll arrange things for J Country immediately." After discussing business, I asked her, "When will you arrive in Jing City?" "Around 5 in the afternoon." "Okay, I'll pick you up when you arrive." After hanging up and leaving the airport, I asked the driver to take me to the company. Last time I went to Haisha, I was looking for Attorney Zhong. In her previous life, her law firm reached the top 10 in the industry, specializing in serving women and helping thousands of women escape difficult situations. When she was 70, although she preferred to work behind the scenes, she still dominated the business world. That year, Cece fell seriously ill, and treating her drained all our savings. She wanted to give up on treatment. I was at my wit's end. After seeing her on the news, I flew to Haisha and staked her out for over a month. When she finally met me and heard my story, she came out of retirement to help me with my lawsuit. Because the events were so long ago and there was no substantial evidence, coupled with the fact that Cade Lu's actions were all legal and compliant, she put in a great deal of effort to help us recover 20 million. Although 20 million was a drop in the ocean for the Jiang Group at the time, it was a lifeline for us. In court, when I saw her, despite her grey hair, still dominating, my eyes were filled with admiration. I truly wanted to become someone like her. I've looked into lawyer Zhong's past, from a young age. Zhong Lu witnessed her mother being subjected to domestic violence by her father. Her mother wanted a divorce but was unable to do so for various reasons, until she was ultimately beaten to death. However, she was still young at the time, and both families, fearing she would have no one to care for her, signed a letter of forgiveness. As a result, her father avoided imprisonment. Her father treated her poorly and even accepted money from an old bachelor to arrange her marriage. She managed to escape on her own. When she later became a lawyer, the first person she personally sent to prison was her own father. Both she and Cade Lu managed to rise from the bottom. Yet they are different. Cade Lu had the support of the Jiang family, while she relied entirely on herself. There is an unyielding resilience in her that nothing can defeat. 8. Cade Lu's assistant, Chen Qing, was not surprised that I came to the company to audit the accounts, as I do it every year. Before my mother passed away, she instructed me to review the company's financial statements and assets every year. I have always kept her words in mind and checked them annually. However, the company's financial reports were basically flawless each year, so much so that in my previous life, I had no idea when Cade Lu transferred the assets, but Attorney Zhong spotted the issue right away. She flipped through the ledger a few times, frowned, and said, "There's no point in looking at this. Have the finance department bring over the internal accounts." I was stunned. Internal accounts? Attorney Zhong's eyebrows furrowed even deeper. "You don't even know your company has internal and external accounts, and your husband only shows you these every year." I nodded somewhat sluggishly. Some companies maintain two sets of books. The external accounts are for outsiders to see, while the internal accounts are only accessible to the company's top management. The Jiang Group's main business is in the energy vehicle sector. Over the past few years, under Cade Lu's management, it has broken into the industry's top 50. Even with external debts, the annual profits are close to 10 billion. Chen Qing was momentarily stunned when she heard me say I wanted to see the internal accounts. Her gaze turned wary as she looked toward Attorney Zhong. Then, I heard his businesslike tone say, "Madam, to view the internal accounts, you need Mr. Lu's permission. Mr. Lu is still on the plane. I will notify him as soon as he lands." I sneered. What? I, a dignified chairman, don't even have the right to view the company's internal accounts? Chen Qing handled it with ease. Of course, Madam has this power, but the group, before he could finish. I directly made an internal call and summoned the director of the finance department, Zhong Lu, his team, and I audited the company's finances, and it took nearly half a month to complete the inventory. Apart from the one phone call on the day I investigated the internal accounts, where Cade Lu was extremely angry, he hasn't called me since. On social media, I often see him attending various business gatherings and banquets with Vera Gu. Vera Gu holds his arm, smiling like a flower. A perfect match of talent and beauty, they look very well suited together. In his free time, he takes Vera Gu and their 3 children out for trips. Watching meteor showers together and making wishes under the starry sky, if this had happened in the past, seeing these photos would have made me sad and upset, and I would have called him, trying every possible way to get him to come back. But now, I'm not very moved. And I even feel that Vera Gu is somewhat useless. It's been over half a month, and how come there's still no progress between the two, apart from that moment they held hands at the banquet? The detectives Zhong hired have hardly captured any other intimate gestures. Even the surveillance that the detective installed in Cade Lu and Vera Gu's hotel suite didn't capture any inappropriate behavior from them. After Cade Lu arrived at the hotel, he would stare at his phone for about 20 minutes. As if waiting for someone's message or call. I don't know what he was thinking. With his lover right there, how could he still be thinking about other things? In a flash. More than 20 days had passed, and I hadn't seen any movement from them. Just as I was getting anxious and thinking of some crazy ideas, the two finally made progress. Vera Gu helped the heavily drunk Cade Lu into his room. Zhong Lu watched the scene on the monitor, remained silent for a moment, then looked at me and said, "Don't you think you should avoid the situation? After all, for someone you once loved, seeing them with your own eyes would probably be hard to bear." I shook my head and stared at the two people on the screen. The hotel door had just closed when Cade Lu directly pressed Vera Gu against it and kissed her. In the camera frame, Vera Gu clearly froze for a moment before responding passionately, like kindling to a flame. The two kissed passionately, unable to part. By the time they reached the bed, their clothes were already scattered on the floor. At the critical moment, Ethan Lu and Adrian Lu somehow appeared outside Cade Lu's room. I had just thought this is bad when Ethan Lu swiped his card and entered. Upon seeing the two naked people embracing each other, they started shouting loudly, startled by the sharp voices. Cade Lu immediately pushed Vera Gu away and frantically scrambled to find his clothes. Ethan Lu ran to the corridor and called me. I hesitated for a moment before swiping to answer. On the other end, his voice was tinged with helpless sobs. It was the first time I had ever heard him call me Mom so directly. "Mom, come to Country J right now, fly over immediately." I looked at the computer screen and asked calmly, "What's wrong?" Ethan Lu on the other end of the phone was already crying, speaking intermittently. "Dad, and that bad woman are hugging each other naked. Come quickly, come right now, bad woman." I never expected that one day Ethan Lu would call his beloved godmother a bad woman. Cade Lu, wearing a pure white robe, came out into the hotel corridor to comfort the crying Ethan Lu. But Ethan Lu wouldn't let Cade Lu get close at all. In the room, Adrian Lu was punching and kicking Vera Gu, who was naked, and Vera Gu reached out trying to restrain him. In the high-definition footage, Vera Gu's fair neck was covered with dense kiss marks. I watched this farce and said, "What nonsense are you talking? You must have seen wrong." I'm busy right now, I'm hanging up, have fun." After saying that, I hung up the phone and looked at Jong Lu, saying, "Does this count as evidence?" Seeing lawyer Jong nod, I let out a heavy sigh of relief. About half an hour later, another assistant accompanying Cade Lu came and took Adrian Lu and Ethan Lu away. Cade Lu walked in, looking at Vera Gu, who was disheveled, and it was unclear what the two said, but Vera Gu's face was full of grievance. After Vera Gu left, Cade Lu sat on the leather sofa. His reaction was somewhat different from what I had expected. Probably still upset, he looked a bit disheartened. He picked up the cigarette again, lit it, but didn't smoke it, just held it between his fingers. His dark eyes were fixed on the phone on the table, motionless, as if awaiting some kind of judgment. Perhaps because there were no outsiders, he no longer bothered to conceal his emotions. As time passed, I could sense his unease and agitation. As time passed, the cigarette between his fingers gradually burned out. Cade Lu numbly raised his hand, extinguished the nearly finished cigarette in the ashtray, and then let his hand drop weakly. Those usually sharp black eyes were now filled with confusion, unease, and a deep sense of despair. 9. After a long time, he called me, but I didn't answer. He called 5 times in a row, and I still didn't answer. Suddenly, a message from him popped up on WeChat. "Lily Jiang, answer the phone. Now that I have the evidence, I can't be bothered to talk to him." So I just blocked his calls and number outright. He made another call and then sent a message, probably realizing I had blocked him, and in a fit of rage, he threw his phone to the ground, shattering it into pieces. I noticed a red dot there, clicked on it, and saw Vera Gu's selfie. The strawberry mark was clearly visible, accompanied by the caption, "Brother has no mercy at all." One look and I knew she had set it to visible only to me. In my previous life, she often did this, posting many WeChat moments that were only visible to me. When I took screenshots to confront Vera Gu and Cade Lu, Vera Gu claimed I had someone Photoshop them and said that if I couldn't tolerate her, she would leave on her own. There was no need to tarnish her reputation. Cade Lu believed her and then turned around to accuse me of being malicious. I had no interest in paying attention to Cade Lu's emotions anymore. I turned off my phone and started drafting the divorce agreement with lawyer Jong. It seemed like even heaven looked down on a scumbag like Cade Lu. The next day, on his way back from his last business negotiation, he got into a car accident. The car crashed through the railing and plunged into the river. Ethan Lu and Adrian Lu were facing such a major crisis for the first time, so they were naturally anxious. They called me many times, but I didn't answer or care at all. After being rescued, Cade Lu remained in a coma at the hospital for a week. Just as I was regretting not having bought insurance for him, Cade Lu woke up. After waking up, he seemed to have been knocked silly, staring at the ceiling the whole time, ignoring Ethan Lu and Adrian Lu when they spoke to him. Ethan Lu got so anxious that he called me again, but I didn't answer. When the doctor came to examine him, he remained motionless in that position as if he were dead. I came back from a meeting and received a call from the detective, saying that Cade Lu suddenly pulled out his 4-tube and disappeared without a trace. I reviewed the surveillance footage from before Cade Lu's disappearance. He roughly pulled the needle out of his hand without any care, and blood flowed from the back of his hand to his fingertips, then dripped onto the floor. Ethan Lu and Adrian Lu called me again, and even his assistant called me as well. I found it annoying. So I set up an automatic block for calls coming from Country J. Chen Qing also received the news and hurriedly ran into my office. "Madam, President Lu has gone missing in Country J." Without even looking up, I casually replied, "A grown man like him won't get lost." Perhaps because I appeared too calm. He frowned and said, "Madam, the 2 young masters are very worried and have been crying. Would you like to call and comfort them? They'll stop crying when they get tired." Assistant Chen, "Is there anything else?" Chen Qing seemed unable to hold back any longer and said to me, "Chairman, you showed no concern when President Lu had a car accident in Country J, and now you won't care for the young masters either. Do you have no heart? Mr. Lu's hard work over the past few years has basically gone to the dogs." After saying that, he went out to communicate with the assistant over there to resolve the matter. Without saying anything, I directly sent the termination email to the HR department. Whether Cade Lu disappears or dies, it doesn't affect me much, but it will likely impact Jiang Corporation's stock. I called Attorney Zhong in, thinking about how to handle the situation externally if Cade Lu went missing. Just as everyone was overwhelmed by Cade Lu's disappearance, I returned home to find him bustling around the kitchen wearing an apron, with all my favorite dishes laid out on the dining table. I froze for a moment, almost doubting if I was hallucinating. He didn't look well, his beautiful eyes were bloodshot, as if he hadn't had a good night's sleep in a long time. When he saw me, he froze for a moment, then somewhat awkwardly took the initiative to speak. "You're back," I softly hummed in acknowledgement, my eyes unconsciously glancing at the patient gown he was wearing, not understanding what he was up to. Seeing me look at his patient gown, his dark eyes suddenly lit up, and he looked at me with some expectation as he said, "I was in a car accident in Country J." His gaze was too strange. In this life and the last, I had never seen such a look in his eyes, eager, wronged, and with a hint of seeking attention, much like a little puppy begging its owner for affection and petting. I frowned, feeling a bit uneasy. I let out an "oh" and didn't say anything more, sitting at the dining table while staring at the dishes in front of me. "Is there anything else you'd like to eat? I can make it for you." Cade Lu's tone when speaking to me was almost gentle compared to his previous indifference. In the past, he only used this kind of tone with Vera Gu, while being cold to everyone else. I shook my head and couldn't help but sigh. "This is the first time you've cooked for me." He pursed his lips and remained silent for a moment before saying, "From now on, I'll cook whatever you want to eat, whether in my past life or now." Hearing those words come from Cade Lu's mouth is nothing short of horrifying to me. I have good reason to suspect that he knows I discovered his affair with Vera Gu and wants to strike first, to quietly get rid of me and take over my assets. I squeezed the phone in my hand, and to avoid further complications, shook my head and said, "No, Cade Lu, there is no us anymore, is there?" I saw Cade Lu visibly freeze for a moment, then, as if he hadn't heard, he said, "I remember there's pineapple in the fridge. I'll make you sweet and sour pork with pineapple." With that, he turned to leave. I didn't understand why he was pretending not to get it, so I spoke without holding back. "No matter how much you make, I won't eat it. I think it's dirty." Cade Lu froze instantly, his handsome face turning deathly pale. He looked at me, his voice hoarse as he said, "Ali, I'm not dirty. Ethan Lu called me and said you were hugging Vera Gu naked." "I didn't, Ali." "Listen to me." As Cade Lu spoke, he reached out to grab my hand. I recoiled in disgust, stepping far away, and said coldly, "Don't touch me." Touching the disgust in my eyes, he was immediately at a loss. The air was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. I sat, he stood, and after a long silence, I spoke, "Cade Lu, let's get a divorce." "Ali, no, let's not get a divorce. I beg you." Cade Lu's voice was hoarse, carrying a plea and even a hint of humility. Humility. I never imagined that Cade Lu would be associated with the word humble. Even when he was in the orphanage, he had a proud spirit. I thought of the astronomical figures in the internal accounts, of Cade Lu's talent. A genius like him naturally had the right to be proud and would never feel inferior. Not to mention how humble he looked in front of an enemy, someone he considered as low as dust. His eyes quickly reddened, and he almost choked out, "Ali, I'm the jerk. Hit me, scold me. Do whatever you want, but let's not get divorced. Really, I'm begging you." His pain didn't seem fake. I couldn't understand it. Marrying Vera Gu was something he had dreamed of in his past life. "I know, Cade Lu, you've always loved Vera Gu. Don't you want to marry her openly and stay with her until old age?" Remembering something, I spoke up again. "Regarding Vera Gu, our Jiang family has wronged you. If we hadn't adopted you, you might not have been separated from her. If I hadn't complained in front of my mother back then, you wouldn't have been apart for 7 years. Attorney Zhong told me that at such a critical moment, we can't push them too hard. Those 3 are heartless. If we provoke them and they end up hurting me and Cece, the loss would outweigh the gain. Before achieving our goal, while he still feels guilty, it's okay to press our advantage and say some soft words." Thinking, I added, "Moreover, Adrian Lu and Ethan Lu don't like me as their mother. They prefer Vera Gu. Even if we divorce, it wouldn't really affect them. Every word I said was carefully chosen, and I guess they were what he wanted to hear, but somehow, one of those words suddenly struck a nerve, and Cade Lu's tears fell just like that. His dark eyes filled with deep pain and despair. He covered his face with his hands, repeatedly saying, "I'm sorry." His emotional state was truly unexpected, even illogical. Did he hit his head in the car accident in J Country? Fearing he might do something drastic, I spoke up. "Cade Lu, you should still remember the prenuptial agreement you signed. I'll give you 3 days to think it over. If we divorce by agreement, I'll give you 20 million. If we go through a lawsuit, you won't get a single cent. If you've made up your mind." Just before I could finish my sentence, Cade Lu's next words sent a chill down my spine. He lifted his head, his eyes bloodshot as he stared at me and said, "Ali, I've come back too." A single light remark hit me so hard that my head spun and my vision blurred. For a moment, the person before me overlapped with the one from my past life who was full of hatred for me, and Cade Lu turned into a ferocious demon in front of my eyes. I instantly couldn't breathe and my whole body started trembling. I wanted to call Attorney Jong, but my vision started to blur, and I could hear Cade Lu's anxious voice in my ear. Ali, why are you bleeding?" CC 10. When I woke up again, I was in the VIP ward of the hospital. Cade Lu was by my bedside, but I didn't look at him. Instead, I instinctively touched my stomach. Cade Lu seemed to sense my worry and said, "CC, it's okay, you haven't eaten anything since last night. Have some porridge first." As he spoke, he handed me a bowl of soft, well-cooked lean meat porridge. I pursed my lips and didn't take it. He sighed softly and said, "Even if you don't eat, CC still needs to, doesn't she?" Hearing him mention CC, I instinctively frowned, my voice icy. "Cade Lu, you have no right to mention her. If he had left me even 1% of his assets in my last life, CC wouldn't have had to endure so much hardship with me." I hated Cade Lu, and I hated myself. I hate my own foolishness, for not even being able to protect the family fortune, being taken advantage of and driven out of my own home. Cade Lu seemed to suddenly have all his strength drained away. His fingers trembled, and he almost couldn't hold the bowl steady. He said hoarsely, "I'm sorry. The most useless words in the world are 'I'm sorry.'" I didn't react, so he continued, "After I died in my previous life, I stayed by your side." Before he could finish, I sneered, "God has been quite kind to you, not only fulfilling your dying wish but also allowing you to witness it with your own eyes." Cade Lu, watching me being abandoned and betrayed by my own son, trampled underfoot by Vera Gu, cyberbullied into severe depression, becoming a public enemy despised by everyone, CC being bullied and ostracized, witnessing us being dragged into hell bit by bit. You must be feeling quite triumphant, right? Cade Lu's face turned as pale as paper, overwhelmed by guilt, self-blame, and regret. He said despairingly, "Ali, I didn't listen to what he said anymore," picked up my phone, and got out of bed. Cade Lu cautiously tried to help me up, but I mercilessly slapped his hand away. "Get away, don't touch me." I went into the bathroom and sent a message to Jong LV, since Cade Lu has also returned, and he hasn't transferred his assets yet, he naturally refuses to get a divorce. Then, there's only one path left to take. As soon as Lily Jiang entered the restroom, Cade Lu's phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID. It was his assistant from Country J calling. He had just pressed the answer button when his assistant's anxious voice came through. "President Lu, something terrible has happened." What's wrong?" "Didn't you ask me to buy jewelry for Miss Gu and Chloe Song last night? They were wearing it when they went out today and were kidnapped on the street. The kidnappers called and demanded 500 million. Cade Lu's voice was cold, without a hint of surprise, as if he had expected it all along, and said, "Have you called the police?" "Not yet. The kidnappers said they would kill the hostage if we dared to call the police. In a situation like this, if you don't call the police, what are you waiting for? Trust the power of the police, call them, and have them contact her husband as well. Matters like this are better handled by her family." The assistant was clearly taken aback and didn't react immediately. Is there still a problem?" There was a pause on the other end before the person said, "I understand, President Lu. Cade Lu returned after hanging up the phone and didn't see Lily Jiang. Thinking she was still in the restroom, he sat by the hospital bed and started ordering food for Lily Jiang. She was still pregnant with Cici and couldn't go without eating anything. After placing the order, more than 10 minutes passed and she still hadn't come out, feeling uneasy. Cade Lu walked to the restroom door and called out tentatively, "Ali, are you okay?" There was no response from inside. A vague sense of unease stirred in Cade Lu's heart as he said, "Ali, if you don't say anything, I'm coming in." Cade Lu waited 30 seconds, but there was still no response from inside. He hurriedly rushed into the restroom, only to find that Lily Jiang was nowhere to be seen. 11. Cade Lu never expected that Lily Jiang would disappear right under his nose. As if she had vanished into thin air, no matter how hard he searched, he couldn't find her. If it weren't for her proceeding with the divorce lawsuit as usual and even making a public disclosure of assets, he would have thought she had truly disappeared. Lily Jiang was determined to divorce him. In her heart now, there was not a shred of trust left for him. She disclosed her assets because she was afraid he would transfer them, if he hadn't also returned. She probably wouldn't have even told him about being pregnant with Cici. Cade Lu felt as if he had swallowed a bitter gall, with bitterness spreading from his throat all the way to his heart, but he couldn't blame anyone, for everything that happened was his own fault. In his past life, the arrogant young man didn't understand what love was. He always believed he loved Vera Gu, resenting Lily Jiang for reporting to his mother, for tearing him and Vera Gu apart, and for forcing Vera Gu into a corner. Because of this, Vera Gu had no choice but to marry a 60-year-old man while pregnant with his child, only to suffer domestic violence. She and Chloe Song also endured years of gossip and slander, so he too wanted Lily Jiang to suffer. Perhaps because of this obsession, he did not leave immediately after his death but stayed by their side. He witnessed with his own eyes the shock and confusion in her clear eyes after he told her to go to hell, and then her heart-wrenching sobs after his death. When Mother Jiang passed away, she cried just as sorrowfully, her eyes so swollen she could barely open them. She is truly foolish and slow-witted, never realizing his hatred for her all these years. After his burial, she seemed to have aged significantly, with even her hair turning much grayer, and she became much quieter. It was within his expectations that she and the 3 children were driven out of the house. He hated Lily Jiang and actually had little affection for the 3 children she bore. The reason he had children with her was just so she would focus her energy on the children and bother him less. As a result, he neglected the education of the 3 children, Ethan Lu and Adrian Lu, influenced by him since childhood, took Lily Jiang's efforts for granted, showed her no respect, and even belittled their mother. He was actually aware of all this, but he simply couldn't be bothered to intervene. As the heiress of the Jiang Group and its nominal chairwoman, as well as Cade Lu's wife, even though people mocked her behind her back as a fool, everyone treated her with utmost respect in her presence. The grievances she suffered were not even a tenth of what Vera Gu endured. Since Cici was born, she had always been more attached to Lily Jiang. He extended his hatred to her, always viewing Cici as an ungrateful child, nowhere near as well-behaved and obedient as Chloe Song, and grew to dislike her more and more. Perhaps Cici also senses his dislike for her and does not feel particularly close to him. In fact, he left 2 wills, one bequeathing all his property to his daughter with Vera Gu, Chloe Song, and the other stating that if the 3 children did not want Lily Jiang to return, they would be given 20% of the Jiang family's shares. He hated Lily Jiang and wanted to see her abandoned by everyone, watching her slowly dragged into hell all alone. But when he saw her being driven out of her home, losing lawsuit after lawsuit, and unable to survive in the capital, he didn't feel the happiness he had imagined. Even when she lost the lawsuit and secretly hid in a corner crying, he would feel a tightness in his chest, struggling to breathe. Lily Jiang was raised in wealth from a young age and did not place much importance on material desires. She cried not because of the property, but because she failed to protect what Mother Jiang had left for her. It was him, bullying her for being foolish, bullying her because after her mother's death, there was no one to support her. After Vera Gu claimed that Chloe Song was his child, He began transferring his assets. He thought that Chloe Song and Vera Gu had suffered so much, and this property would serve as compensation for the two of them. But later, everything he did became a boomerang, all striking back at him. Chloe Song wasn't his child at all. He believed that he had lain in the same bed with Vera Gu that night when he was drunk, but in reality, nothing had happened at all. He thought that the kind and innocent Vera Gu, in order to achieve class mobility, had pursued a 60-year-old married man to secure her position. She casually slept with a few men for a few nights to get pregnant, relying on the child to elevate her status. She successfully pushed aside the original wife and became a wealthy lady. However, later the rich man discovered that the child wasn't his, which led him to start abusing her, with no way out. Vera Gu then turned to him. He blindly trusted Vera Gu. No matter what she said, he believed it. Whenever Vera Gu and Lily Jiang had a disagreement, he would unhesitatingly side with Vera Gu. Cade Lu couldn't bear to imagine how much grievance Lily Jiang had endured over the years. She just didn't know how to express it, or perhaps she knew that even if she told him, he wouldn't stand up for her or take her side. He was a failed husband, a failed father, and a failed man. Mother Jiang adopted him and gave him the best education, yet after her death, he treated her most cherished daughter so cruelly. He was a complete and utter failure. He regretted countless times why he had been so heartless and cruel to her back then. If only he had shown his wife a shred of pity, given her some security, she and Cece wouldn't have suffered so much. Cade Lu's thoughts were in disarray, and his heart began to ache with sharp, stabbing pains once again. In truth, Vera Gu was right. He had fallen in love with Lily Jiang long ago. That's why, from the time they left the orphanage until they reunited, Vera Gu had been imitating Lily Jiang's every move, and he had willingly fallen in love with Vera Gu because he knew the real Vera Gu wasn't foolish. He was just subconsciously resisting the fact that he had fallen in love with someone perceived as simple-minded. If only he had realized his true feelings a little earlier, perhaps everything would have been different. He had thought that his return was a chance given by heaven to make amends. But it seemed that everything was already too late. Cade Lu looked around the desolate villa and realized that the house felt much emptier. In the past, there were photos of a photoshopped family of 4 placed everywhere in the house, which he had once scoffed at. Now that the photos were gone, his heart suddenly felt hollow. Couple slippers, couple mugs, anything related to him had been completely replaced by her. Cade Lu stood up and staggered upstairs into the master bedroom. The giant wedding photo she had someone Photoshop and hung above the bed was also gone. Every little bit of their life together had been removed by her. Just like the love she suddenly withdrew, Cade Lu reached out to open the cabinet. He remembered there was a hand-woven bracelet inside that she had made for his safety, but he had never worn it and had always left it lying in the cabinet. But now, the bracelet was gone. In its place were 3 condoms, scented with jasmine, Lily Jiang's most hated fragrance, and Vera Gu. She loves jasmine the most. He didn't buy these, and Ailey certainly wouldn't. Birth control products. They never let Aunt Wu touch them. The rest, what could be bought and placed here, was Vera Gu. Cade Lu's face turned pale, as if something was choking his throat, and his breathing began to become difficult. 12. After I left the capital, I came to Yuncheng. This was where my grandmother grew up. The scenery is beautiful, the pace of life is slow, and it's very suitable for recuperation. I am here to rest during my pregnancy, and in my free time, I visit my grandparents' graves. Attorney Zhong often calls me to update me on the situation in the capital and the Jiang family. Cade Lu went to look for her many times, asking about my whereabouts. It is said that Cade Lu doesn't seem to be doing well, and has been taken to the emergency room several times due to drinking. When I heard that, I said, his white moonlight just had an accident abroad, so of course he's not feeling well. Vera Gu was assaulted and then murdered in Country J, along with Chloe Song. Their bodies were dismembered by the kidnappers and thrown into a septic tank. This news even made it to the trending topics. Attorney Zhong fell silent for a long moment after hearing my words, then changed the subject. When she was 5 months pregnant, Cade Lu finally gave in and agreed to the divorce. He left with the 2 children. taking nothing, but on the condition that he would have visitation rights to Cece once a week. Once a week was too frequent. I didn't agree. Another half a month passed, and he agreed to my proposal of once a month. On the day the plane landed, Lawyer John came to pick me up, and Cade Liu, Ethan Liu, and Adrian Liu also came along. Though it had only been a few months since we last saw each other, they seemed to have changed a lot. Ethan Liu and Adrian Liu have become quieter and more polite. When they see me, they even call me Mom, and the look in their eyes is no longer one of disdain but of respect. As for Cade Liu, he has lost a lot of weight. Although he is well-groomed, the exhaustion and weariness in his eyes are unmistakable. Vera Gu's situation has hit him hard. Sitting in the car, before I could even speak, Attorney Zhong said, "Mr. Liu, to Huaju Junting, please. Huaju Junting is in the Northern District." Cade Liu changed direction and headed toward the Northern District. The car was quiet the whole way, except for Cade Liu's unnecessary greetings, such as how the child is doing, whether there's morning sickness, if I'm sleeping well. Ethan Liu and Adrian Liu were sitting in the back, and I caught them sneaking glances at me several times, or more precisely, at my stomach. With curiosity in their eyes, noticing that I was looking at them, they awkwardly averted their gaze. Finally, Ethan Liu couldn't hold back and spoke first, trying to act cute. "Mom, Dad said that my brother and I are going to have a little sister, when she's born. My brother and I will play with her and take good care of her. We won't let anyone bully her. By the way, what's her name? Take good care of her." In their past life, these two were the ones who bullied Cece the most. I pursed my lips and interrupted him. "After your dad and I divorce, I'll take good care of her. You're still young. Just focus on taking care of yourselves." "Mom, are you divorcing Dad?" Ethan Liu's voice carried obvious shock, as if he had just learned the news. I paused for a moment, looked at Cade Liu who was driving, and said, "You didn't tell them." Cade Liu tightened his grip on the steering wheel and said, "I didn't get around to it. The trial is tomorrow, and he says he didn't get around to it." Ethan Liu and Adrian Liu began to cry, just like many children do, weeping bitterly upon learning that their parents were getting a divorce. "Mom, we don't want you and Dad to get a divorce. Is it because Anan and Ziyu are not being good that you want to divorce Dad?" "Mom, from now on, Anan and Ziyu will be good. We'll listen to whatever you say. Please don't get divorced." If this were before, seeing them cry so heartbrokenly, I would have long been heartbroken and gone to comfort them. But now, I remain unmoved, just as they had betrayed me to please Vera Gu, watching Cece and me suffer, watching me die in the sun shower without lifting a finger. The bond between me and them as mother and son should have been severed in the previous life. The car stopped in front of Huaju Junting. As I unbuckled my seatbelt, Cade Liu spoke up. "Do you need anything? I can help you. I'll get off here." He seemed to think he'd misheard. Even Ethan Liu and Adrian Liu, who were still crying, turned to look at me, sobbing and sniffling as they said, "Mommy, aren't you coming home?" I'm not going back." As I pushed the car door open, I heard Cade Liu say in a hoarse voice, "Ali," though it was just 2 words, they seemed to carry 1,000 unspoken thoughts. I paused for a moment without turning around. On the day of the court hearing, the judge asked me, "Ms. Jiang, are you certain you wish to relinquish custody and visitation rights for both children?" I looked at the 2 pairs of eyes in the gallery, clearly nervous yet filled with expectation, and nodded without hesitation, "I'm sure." When the court session ended, Ethan Liu and Adrian Liu immediately stood up and ran toward me. In their haste, Adrian Liu tripped and fell hard to the ground. Lying there, he pleaded, "Mom, don't leave us, don't abandon me and my brother." Ethan Liu also looked at me with the same pleading eyes. I only glanced at them briefly before indifferently looking away. After gathering the documents, I had just stood up when Cade Liu grabbed my hand. He said, unable to bear it, "They're still so young now. Are you really not going to keep them?" I didn't want to hear what he had to say. I just looked at him and said, "Cade Liu, you shouldn't have forgotten how they treated me in our past life." Cade Liu's face trembled, and his grip on my hand gradually loosened. After a long pause, he finally said in a low, hoarse voice, "I'm sorry, I didn't raise them well." I said nothing more, nor did I linger. I turned and walked away. "Mom, please don't abandon us." Behind me, my 2 children were screaming their hearts out. I clenched my fists, suppressing my maternal instincts, and walked straight out of the courthouse. 13. After the divorce, my life started to get back on track. Zhonglu's law firm was still in the fundraising stage. I invested a lot of money, became her partner, and then bought an office building in the best location in the center of Jingcheng, establishing the firm's second branch, while I was taking care of my pregnancy. I enrolled in online courses taught by top global business PhDs and hired a professional manager to take over Lu's position. Few people can match Lu's talent. He had only been gone for less than 3 months, yet the performance of the Jiang Group had almost plummeted in a straight line. Even the product updates and iterations began to receive a lot of negative feedback in the market. For a long-established enterprise like the Jiang Group, reputation is extremely important. I was so anxious that I was losing hair and couldn't eat for several days in a row. It drove lawyer Zhong crazy. How can you not eat? You might not eat, but my goddaughter still needs to. I stared at the company's financial statements, a worried frown on my face. I haven't had much of an appetite lately. Zhonglu already owned her own company, and her capabilities far surpassed mine. She took the report from my hand, glanced at it, and immediately frowned. We've lost almost 8 billion in 3 months. What happened? I pursed my lips and said nothing, but she apparently already knew, and after a long silence, she spoke. If it really doesn't work out, just have your ex-husband come back. I can see he's quite willing. Don't reject the idea right away. Professional matters should be handled by professionals. After all of this is yours now. If he comes, he'll just be working for you, with me here. I'll keep an eye on the company's finances for you. He won't be able to touch them. Some men just need a reality check. I think he's a classic case of not knowing what he had until it was gone. Anyway, he still has feelings for you now. He's talented and capable. Forget about love and hate. What's more important than money? Just call him over, learn from him, and once you can handle things on your own, you can kick him out. To be honest, those so-called business PhDs can't compare to him. No one ever complains about having too much money. Those PhDs who are successful might just start business schools or management consulting firms, but in the end, what they teach is just theoretical. It's like teaching. They only cover general knowledge. They haven't actually delved deep into various industries, so what you can learn from them is just superficial, and it might not even be useful in real life. A lot of things require hands-on learning, practice, reflection, and summarization. We women must not only learn to be independent, but also learn to leverage symbiotic relationships, making everything in the world work for us. If I had an ex-husband like him, I would squeeze every last bit of value out of him. You don't love him anyway, so nothing he does can hurt you now. If he's no longer useful, just kick him to the curb. Lawyer Zhong's words had a great impact on me. After hesitating for 2 days, I still called Lu. I didn't hide anything and directly expressed my thoughts. There was no response for a long time. Lu is no fool, and since he was also reborn, with his abilities, he definitely wouldn't do worse than at Jiang Corporation. If you're not willing, no, I'm willing, Ali, I'm willing, I'll go back tomorrow. Listening to Lu's somewhat excited voice on the phone, I frowned and said, you should call me Chairman Jiang, Chairman Jiang. I am now 8 months pregnant. And whether it's studying or company matters, I handle everything online. On Lu's first day back at the company, he separated the short video division and began developing short videos. We both know how popular short videos will be in the future. I just didn't expect him to start developing it now. I thought he was planning to go solo. In my imagination, we were supposed to be at odds until death. I never thought that after the divorce, we could still coexist peacefully. However, when I see him, my heart no longer races. I no longer feel inferior or awkward, and I no longer worry about whether he likes me or dislikes me. I've started to take on the demeanor of a boss, even feeling happy about the sharp rise in performance due to his return. It was as if we had swapped places. I noticed he started observing my moods, trying to please me. He would even travel halfway across the capital just to buy me my favorite pastries, spend a fortune on albums I liked, and bring in my favorite theater actors. The day I gave birth to Cece, I needed a C-section due to a breech presentation. He was upset for over half a month because he couldn't sign my surgery consent form. Even Ethan Liu and Adrian Liu learned to give me gifts in various creative ways. These were all things I used to hope for, but now, as I watch them do these things, I feel nothing inside. Cade Liu, just like in his previous life, died young, but fortunately, by the time he passed away, I had already fully learned how to manage the company, analyze the market, and had developed my own set of insights in the field of new energy. When I arrived at the hospital, he tightly held my hand and, through the oxygen mask, called my name over and over, his voice growing fainter and fainter. Ethan Liu and Adrian Liu covered their mouths and cried by the hospital bed, sobbing uncontrollably. I looked at him and raised a polite yet distant smile. "You've been too tired all these years, rest well now." He looked at me, struggling to say something, but in the end, he didn't. Only tears fell from the corners of his eyes. After Cade Liu passed away, I buried his ashes next to Vera Gu and Chloe Song. After Cade Liu's death, Ethan Liu and Adrian Liu seemed to mature all of a sudden, on Mother's Day. They bought me many gifts, and also brought many for Cece. So many that I couldn't carry them all with both hands. Perhaps because they had just lost their father, they projected all their longing for parental affection onto me. They looked at the villa behind me, their eyes filled with a certain expectation. I knew they wanted me to invite them in for a meal. Pretending not to understand, I said, "It's getting late now, you should head back early and be careful in the dark." They left with disappointment, and I turned around to go back inside, holding the gift box in my hand. As I passed the trash bin near my home, I threw everything in my hand into it. Just as I finished throwing it away, I caught sight of two figures out of the corner of my eye. Turning around, I saw Ethan Liu and Adrian Liu standing there, each holding a clumsily knitted scarf, clearly handmade by them. They looked at the gifts in the trash, then turned the same sorrowful gaze toward me. I pursed my lips and, after a long pause, said, "Since you've all seen it, don't come here anymore from now on. I still can't bring myself to like you. In fact, I even feel disgusted." Their tears fell just like that, and with trembling lips, they called me Mom, but I no longer paid any attention and went inside. Closing the door behind me, they stood at the door for a long time, and then left dejectedly. After that night, we never saw each other again. As for how they are doing, I'm not quite sure either. In any case, Cece and I have been living very happily.